welcome everyone to the stream. We are here to talk about the fantastic and amazing FileMaker platform. Welcome to fmtraining.tv. My name is Margaret. I'm here with the fantastic Jon Hogle. Jon, where art thou? There you are.
Here I am.
You are on screen, Jon. Wave.
Beautiful.
So with that being said, welcome everyone. We're glad to have you. Quick reminder, we stream on 4 platforms, actually. We stream on Discord, Twitch, YouTube, and we also stream on Zoom. If you would like a Zoom link, let me know. We would greatly appreciate it. So Monday, we have Jon with us for doing value lists today. We had someone send in a message asking us to do a deep dive on value lists. We have covered value lists many times. I think I actually even one semi-recently, but that's fine. We'll just rehash it. If everyone has any more unique questions of things that they can't sort out, let me know. On Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week, we are going to be finishing out the How to Build a Bot for FileMaker series. Nick has also said that if you have any Nick-related questions about some things that he has done in the past that you would like to know about, to please ask them. I will collect them for him and fling them at him. On Tuesday, we have the beginning of a new series, FileMaker UI UX design, new and intermediate. We have done this kind of before, but it's been like a couple years, and it's always gonna be new Nick stuff. And this will be the beginner series, and we're gonna have an advanced series. So this will be like pretty much the next several months of our live stream is going to be us discussing UI design, and then having other people like randomly appear. If you have like things that you would like to see in other random appearances, let me know. I'm always collecting ideas for that sort of thing. With that being said, if you would like to support the channel of wonder and joy, feel free to buy our FM Training annual subscription bundle. It is a complete annual subscription, and it pretty much has 100+ hours of video content that's highly dynamic and very entertaining. It's Monday. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Please buy the bundle. We appreciate it. Help support the channel. Allows us to do this for free 5 days a week. If you already have, thank you very much. So with that being said, and cat distractions aside, hi, Jon. How are
Hello.
you doing today? How's life?
It's a little safer from cats over here than it is over there, apparently. But
I have 2, and they scream in my live stream office, so you know.
that's always nice. It adds ambiance, really. I'm doing well. So as Margaret had said, we're taking a look at value lists today, and I have some things to share with you. She mentioned you guys went over value lists relatively recently. In case people weren't there or something along those lines, I'm probably going to repeat some of the things you've already heard, but hopefully you'll be able to see something you haven't before or just get a refresher on something that's a pretty important topic. Value lists. For a simple introduction, just talk about value lists. What are they? How do they work? So a value list is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is a list of values. And here is what they look like. There's a few different ways to get here. I'll show you some other ones in just a second. And so we have this value list we set up. We called it invoice status custom. And it is these custom values, and it contains all of these. So it's got preliminary, active, paid, void, canceled. What these is just a list of values that I give to my users so that when they enter data into a field, it is limited to what is in this list. And it's there for their convenience, but also to help me limit errant entries. No one's going to misspell preliminary or anything like that if they can just click it from a list here and they don't have to hand type it. It's something that helps me because I am terrible at spelling. And if you notice any spelling mistakes, please don't tell me. From a basic level, that is what they are. And then you can set them into your database and they look like this. You got a little drop down here. And it has all those statuses we just talked about. And so the way that all of that works is from layout mode, you click on a field, and you have a few different options of the way that you can present your value list to a user. So over here in this far right tab here, the data tab in the inspector, you have this control style here So from an edit box, this is what everything usually is, and this is just a free-form type. You can click in here and type whatever you want to. From there, we have drop-down lists. Drop-down list is our first option for our value lists. You get value list, as I mentioned and showed just now with the definitions over here. You get a list of all of them. Right here, you select which one you're looking for, click it, and then it becomes a drop-down list, which is what this field is. It looks like this. It selects everything in the field, and then as they click on any value, it just replaces whatever was in the field with whatever they clicked on. There are a couple other options that you can do. For instance, you can change it to be a pop-up menu. A pop-up menu is very similar to a value list, and I will explain the differences. For a pop-up list, you get the same values that you had here. The difference between them primarily is that in a pop-up list like this, you can't edit the values. There's no way I can click into this field and type anything. It is only the values from my list. Nothing can be changed. With the previous version, with the drop-down list, you do have that option of you can click here and then click again, and then you actually can still freeform type and put something else in this field. So it's kind of I would say that the drop-down lists are more for if you just want to give some people some common things that are usually put into a field for easy access, whereas a pop-up menu would be, I want to make things simpler, but I also don't want them to be able to put in their own values or make any changes to the list. Then there are two other options that you have for these. You have checkbox sets. This is kind of a terrible place to show them. I'm sorry, did you have a
question? He
quick
does.
question?
Anyone have a good way to remember the difference between the two?
Between drop-down lists and pop-up menus?
Yes.
I don't off the top of my head have a mnemonic for those. I hadn't even.
A mnemonic, huh? I'd have to think about that actually. And someone wants to know if we'll talk about fixed versus dynamic value lists, but we'll get there, I assume.
Yes, that is coming, but I just want to give everybody a basic understanding of what they are and how they can be used before we go into a more advanced topic.
No, absolutely, that makes perfect sense. But yeah, no, I'll have to think on that mnemonic. Can. Okay, you are welcome to keep going, Jon.
All right. So then there's a couple other types. You have checkbox sets, so you can see both of them here actually. So this is a radio button, and the radio button, it displays all of the values in your list as a set of buttons here. So let's say I wanted to add a new category. We have our products and our services, and then we have our rent. We rent out warehouse space or something, and so it's another type of service that we have. And we can say okay there, and we'll add it here. So now you have product, services, and rent. And the advantage of radio buttons is that one value can be selected, and but all values are present on screen. It allows people to, if you have the space for it, see everything that they can choose from. It makes it a little easier for making smoother and cleaner designed forms. The other way of doing this is checkbox sets. And checkbox sets work just a little bit differently. The way that they work is they show the values the same, but they are checkboxes, and you can check more than one of them. So there's no limit. So I could say that this is a product and its rent, or it's a service and its rent, which makes way more sense. And you can check different values, and they all will pertain to a single item. So this is something that you might want to use for like keywords if you were trying to do keywords for easier finds, or if you were trying to do something like tags for a photo, something along those lines. It'd be something that you'd use checkbox sets for. whereas radio buttons would be, for things that have a relatively small list and only one value applies to each item. And you can see something a little interesting about these is if you were to take this, I'm sorry, I'm making noise not on purpose. If I were to take this and I were to put it as a edit box in a really messy way, don't tell anyone, it would allow you to, you can see that the values here are in a list and they are separated by returns. And as I click a new one, so if I click product, you can see it gets added. If I click it again, it goes away. Same thing with rent, but if I add product, rent, and it adds the values to this list, and that's how FileMaker sees them. It can be useful for a number of things, so it's just an interesting thing I wanted to point out. This isn't a live version of Starting Point, so it doesn't matter about those changes, so I don't really need to change them back. So that is the short introduction of what is a value list and what are some examples of how I can use them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about how value lists are set up and what kinds of things I can use in value lists and how they can be beneficial. So if I go into value lists, sorry to walk you through that again, that's File, Manage, Value Lists. These are all the ones that already exist in Starting Point, but we're just going to make a new one for the purposes of the example. And so we can name it whatever we want. So it's just going to be live stream, if I can spell or type. And so you can see we have 3 different options of things that we can put into this box. And for the purposes of what we're doing right here, I'm going to do this use custom values section. I will move on to the other 2 and get more into dynamic value lists in a moment. So down here, this is all just freeform typed. I want to make a value list and I want it to be a list of people. So I got John Doe and I got Jane Doe and I have no last name. It's French. And then I have, whoever. So there's a custom list of items, and the way that this works is whatever I type in here is what people will see in the value list. So if I hit OK here and I hit OK here, and I were to show you just this again, right? If I change this to the one that I just made, it's alphabetized over here. The live stream, you can see now the values are what I just typed. I have John Doe, Jane Doe, and Mr. Edward, no last name. And so that is a basic example of what custom values would look like in a value list and how you could implement them if you wanted to into a solution. I'm going to switch over to a different file, which will be made available to you to talk about some of the more advanced sections. So let's start with, actually, I'm sorry, there's one more thing I want to point out about value lists that's something that's useful and I think it's overlooked sometimes. So if I go to invoices and I'm in the list view and I want to sort by the status, I can do that and it's sorted. But it's alphabetized, and this isn't the way that I want to see it. I want to see it in the order that I can select it from my value list. So I want to see it, preliminary up top, then active, then paid, then void. There's actually a way that you can sort records based on a value list. So you can see here, there's a custom order based on value list. I'm going to do it by this custom one because that's the one that we hand typed. And I can say sort by those. And now I have preliminary up at the top, and then I have active, paid, and void because that's the order they are in this list. And that can be useful for, well, this kind of stuff, kind of exactly. If I wanted to, have a list of my invoices and I have projects that are in various stages of development, and I want to list them, in stage order, but it's not necessarily alphabetized. I can use a value list and sort them based on that so that everything in stage 1 shows up at the top and I can, get an easy sort that way and still use a list view. And I think that is something that is often overlooked about value lists. So the next thing we're going to talk about is what are called filtered value lists. This file does exist, and like I said, it'll be made available to you. And so I'm going to first show you what it is, and then we'll talk a little bit about how it works. So you can see here I have two different items. I have item 1 and it's fruit, and I have item 2 and they're vegetables, okay? And then over here I have subcategories of apples, peaches, and pears for fruits. So if I go over here into my categories, you can see it. The category is fruit. I have apple, pear, and peach. And I can add a new one. I can add a mango. Right? So there's a new list here. Now, if I go over to my demo, you can see that here I have apple, mango, peaches, and pears. And so I have a list here of value lists that dynamically grow based off of values in a different field in a different table. And it is fairly easy to set up, and it is an extremely powerful tool for when you're trying to get lists of, for instance, things that are categories and subcategories, which is sort of how this is set up. So people that do inventory or people that, sell cars and things like that and have categories and subcategories of different items, something along those lines, it can be really useful for narrowing down what a specific item is. So let's take a look at how that works. So if I click on subcategory here, we already know that it is a value list. So let's take a look at how it is set up. You can see here that it says use values from the field of subcategory. And so that is subcategory being the table where I entered in the different fruits. And then subcategory is also the name of field. You can see also I have the include only related values starting from box checked. And what this does is it limits the choices that I have through the relationships. So if you'll notice that's how I'm narrowing down the options. So the first thing I had is the category of fruits, then I had the subcategory, and I only wanted to see what was selected as a fruit. So like I said, I have pear there, but if you look at this vegetables one, I got a completely different list. But I'm still using the same value list in the field because I'm in a portal. So there's only one field here. There's no hidden tricks there. It's just all coming from this one value list. And the way that that works is it goes through the relationship from over here. So you can see up here, the category is fruit, and I had these 4 items. If you go over here, you have vegetable, you have these items. And so that you have this drop-down list here of the related items between the two. So that's how I got carrots. Carrots are in vegetables. And if I am in fruits, I don't have the option of carrots because it doesn't fit into the relationship. Dwindling value lists in what ways, Stu? What do you mean by a dwindling value list? I would think that this would sort of be considered that same thing. Because if I were to do this, right, and I duplicate this and I just say it's subcategory, right? And I say use the values from a field, but I say include all values. You can see here that this value list is actually much longer now. I have apples, carrots, mangoes, peaches, I have everything from both lists. But it is filtered with our category field here that makes it so that our list is significantly shorter. You can see, so now it's just the ones that had the fruit option. And then down here is just the one that had the vegetables option. And if I were to make a new one and not specify a category, I don't have any options. There is no pop-up that shows up because nothing matches the relationship. So let's take a little bit of a look behind the curtain at how this
Okay, Stu answered, by the way. Used to limit the choices based on other user selections, i.e. remove items from a list when the user picks it to prevent duplicate entries.
So if I was in the portal again and I selected fruit and then make it so pear wouldn't be an option here. Is that what you're suggesting, Stu?
Yes.
Okay. It's something that I will loop back to if there's some time left, but I want to make sure that we get through the rest of the material first, if that's okay with you. So let's take a look at how this works behind the scenes. In here, you can see I have this table of demo, line items, and then I have category and I have subcategory. Go to my relationships. I have category equals category. And I have subcategory with the category field being the same as the category field in the line items table. And so what happens is if I'm in line items and I have selected the category of fruits, then when I go over here and I'm looking at the value list, it's looking at anything that has anything in the subcategory table where the category is the same as what is in this field, in this case, fruits, and it's coming up with this list. And same thing if I switch to vegetables, works the exact same way. And you can see that when you look at this and you click in here, you'll see that I am displaying from subcategory the field of subcategory, but I'm including only related values starting from that relationship here, the subcategory line items category. So we can see that the list is filtered based on our previous selections in terms of using a relationship. And Stu, I think that just to shortly answer your question, I believe that you could use a self join to eliminate values from a list, following the same concept and just taking it a little bit deeper. So that's more or less what this is. That's how these work. We have a dynamic value list that grows as I add items. And they're all based on, these tables. So if I added, more fruits or more vegetables, the list will get longer, but they are still limited in terms of when I click on in my table where I'm actually trying to display the data, I'm still limiting them based off of the overall category that they're a part of. And so that's sort of a quote unquote dynamic value list in a nutshell. There is one other option for value lists, and that is that you can use lists from other files. I rarely, if ever, use this option because just the way that FileMaker has changed from multi-file solutions to single-file solutions, more often than not, you're never trying to use a value list from another file. Plus, it's all based relatively on file paths and things like that. It's not that you can't use this option, I just rarely have occasion to, and it's usually easier and a little cleaner to just recreate the value list here if that is, possible. And then there is, I keep saying there's one other thing, but there is actually another thing that I want to talk about, and I wonder if I can set it up here quickly. So everyone probably is familiar with the way that we do our relationships in Starting Point with these magnifying glasses that bring these lists here like that. And I selected one and then it brought it in here as the contact for this. There is another way that can be done. And so I'm going to do it here without using the scripts. And it is relatively messy. So I don't know that I would recommend it doing it this way unless you have a very short list of values that you're trying to do. But I've seen it done and I want to show you guys how it works. So I'm going to make a new list here, and this is going to be called accounts, and I'm going to use values from a field, and I'm going to use it from accounts, and it's going to be account. Actually, I'm going to do it this way. So the first thing I'm going to do, so it says use value from first field. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to actually use ID account in the first field. I can choose to also display values from a second field, and then I'm going to choose the account name. It gives me an option down here of different sorts. So I can sort by the first field or the second field if I wanted to sort. In this case, I'd want to use the second field because the number of the account doesn't really matter to me. I want it alphabetically. So I can say okay, and I'll say okay again, and a third time. And you'll see when I click into the field that I get this option, and it gives me both values. So I have the account ID and also the name of the account, which I can select. But you'll notice that it only put in the value of the first account. It didn't actually put in the name of the company, even though I'm displaying both of them. When I click on one of them, it will put in just the value of the first field. And another thing about doing it this way is you can also choose to tell it that I want to only show values from the second field. And what that does is it gets rid of the display of the ID account. So when I click on this, I only get the account name. But you'll see that if I click on this, I still get the ID. It doesn't actually put the name in the field. There's something interesting about this is if I were to go in here and I were to change this, instead of it being a drop-down list, I wanted it to be a pop-up menu. And I exit this. See, now you can see the name. And it's very deceiving doing it this way because if I look through the data viewer and I say I want to look at the account field, of account name, see that the value of the field is actually account 01. It's just displaying the name of the account. And the reason that that's dangerous is that you can be, when you look at the data, it doesn't necessarily show you what's actually in the field, and it could cause you a lot of headache later when you're trying to, for instance, sort. If I wanted to sort on this field, this would show up in the A's because the actual value is account 01, even though the field is kind of quote unquote pretending to be Richard Carlton Consulting. So there is some danger in doing that. There are ways, David, to do it with drop-down lists. I've tried a few of them. I don't know that I have tried Nick's latest way. But I have noticed that they don't work as well on Windows as they do on Mac. And so if you're a Windows-based company, and maybe this particular one that Nick is using is different, but in my experience in using the drop-down list selection, you'll see that. Another interesting point is that this is actually also a Mac-based thing. If I were on a Windows computer and I did this, you would still see account 01 in this field. So there's some dangers to that. A long time ago, people would stack fields on top of each other to mitigate the issue for the Windows Mac kind of difference. And so what they would do is they would have, this up here like this. In the drop-down list options. So you could click and select one, and then what they would do is they'd put another field over top of it that would be, so for this, we're going to do account name, and we're going to change this field to be ID account. And so what people would do is they would use this, they would have this be the drop-down list, then they'd click into this field, and they would turn off entry in browse mode, and they would just stack them on top of each other. And it works because you can click through objects in FileMaker. So if you have something that's not enterable on top of something that is enterable, You can actually click through it. So if I clicked through here and clicked on this, you'll see the name exists now as Richard Carter Consulting. Because of a lookup that fires. So because of the way that the database is set up, when you set the account field, it goes and looks for the name of the account and automatically puts it into the account name field here in contacts. And so when you select one, you're setting this ID, you click on this, it'll put in the actual field, but it's two different fields that are stacked on top of each other, and it doesn't work in WebDirect. And there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do things this way, but it is something that used to work, and it's something that can work if you're, making a small solution that's, not deployed on WebDirect or not just one for personal use or something, and you want to have this option. It is something that still works in FileMaker. WebDirect. Yeah, layering objects doesn't work well in WebDirect. It's true. You can't do the click through in WebDirect. It doesn't allow you to click through an object that's on top of the other one. So it would try to go into this field that I turned off entry for, and it just wouldn't work. And so they'd just be clicking and nothing would happen. And those are some interesting things about value lists in terms of different uses for them and different ways that you can kind of deploy them into your solution. Some of them good ideas, some of them bad. Please don't tell the boss that I showed you guys a bunch of bad ideas, because I don't think that he'd appreciate it very much. But that is, I think it's important to learn things that can be done, because you might be able to think of a way that isn't a bad way of deploying that same type of feature.
There was a question somewhere that I got lost. If you were going to do finds, would you use a drop down or would you advise a pop-up?
That's an interesting question. I would suggest using whatever you use in the actual field, because it could just be that they want to type in something custom. They shouldn't ever need to in a find, because if you're already limiting what they can select by a dropdown, then there would be no reason for them to be able to hand type. But if you use pop-ups, it does prevent you from using the special character finds. So like, for instance, if I were to create a new record here, and this was James, but he doesn't have a last name and he's the president, and I went over here, right, and I did a find, and I wanted to find everybody who had no last name, and I hit equals, I just found James because that's the field with the empty value for last name. You couldn't do that if it was a pop-up menu, because you can't actually click into the field. So if you have people using things like that, or the opposite, right? If I want to find everyone who does have a last name, and I searched with the asterisk key, so I found the other found set, you couldn't do that either. But with a drop-down list, you would still be able to click into that field to do special characters. Quote marks also could be something like email addresses work better if you can put quotes around them. So I guess as a general rule, I would say drop-down lists would be better, unless it's just like a status field and you're searching for active or something like that. Then they don't really need to use any of those, so it wouldn't really matter. There is one other thing I can show you, which is dynamically sorted value lists. So this is a little bit advanced, and so I don't know how deep we really want to jump into this. But we have value lists, and they are sorted alphabetically. But let's say I don't want them sorted alphabetically, such as this, where I have yes and whatever and maybe and no, and they're all in an order, but I still want them to be the values that are in a field. So I have these fields over here, what drive this value list, but I was able to keep them in a specific order. How did I do that? How does it work? It uses a custom function, and what it does is it gets so it uses dest to bin, and so what it does is it takes a numerical number, a decimal value, and it changes it into a binary value, and it will just do that for whatever number is put in front of it. And so the way that this works is in our thing. So you can see here, the requirements, custom function, destbin, and then the calculation, ordered value calc. So if I go into here and you look at this, you can see there's a function here running that's substituting all these zeros and the binary value of the order field, and it's setting it to these two characters. And what these do is it puts characters that you can't actually see visually into the data for the value list in order to sort it in a specific way. It runs through and it does that substitute, and that allows you to set up a value list without having to use numbers like this to order things or do things like that in the actual value list, because the way that most people I've seen that need to sort value lists will do it is that they'll go in here and they'll say, I want to do it this way. This is the common way that you'll see. Do that. I want to go to browse mode. So you have this, and you can see that it didn't sort the way that we want it to. And again, this is a pop-up list that's showing, so that's why the value here is there. But if I actually use the data viewer, I'm pretty sure the number is going to be in the field. Yeah, see. So it can be confusing to people, and it makes it so you have to use pop-up lists, and it can be a mess. And so being able to sort it dynamically based on a number field still, but not having to see it visually, really can help get things working in a way that is easier to use and makes the users happier. They don't have to see numbers, and they don't have to get confused about what the different values are. It is important to note, like, the field storage for default language has to be set to Unicode for this to work, just because of the way that Unicode will handle the binary. And it is what actually drives this into functioning properly. Yeah, using the invisible character tricks. I also wish Claris would invent something that would make it a little bit easier, but did anyone have any questions about value lists, or should we try to loop back at filtering values out of value lists?
I think we should loop back to that because I don't see any other questions. If I missed your question, yell at me, but I don't see any in the list. So let's just loop back to Stu's thing with the whole, you said self-joining and all that jazz.
He wanted to have a value list, so like down here I had fruit, and I wanted someone to enter something in, and he wanted it so the apple wouldn't show up in this list if it exists in the list previously. Stu, I might have to get back to you on that. I don't know that it's something that I can demonstrate at this exact moment, because thinking about it, I would do probably a self join to or do a filter values or filter out, or even do pattern count to get the values out. I worry that doing that will prevent it from coming from the other side, because I'm using it in a field over here, and the only way that I would be able to continue using it from this field would be to filter two different fields against each other to create a third field, which would work, I guess. Or could it be as simple as
Well, we
going
got
into
15 minutes, so it doesn't hurt trying it live. And if it doesn't work, then that's not on you. Because
well, it is on me,
well, I mean,
but
you know what I'm saying.
can I, if I just did this, right, and I said subcategory doesn't equals, would that work if I added it to it? Let's find out together. That broke everything because this value is empty. Right, that would only prevent me from selecting Apple in this drop-down list. which it did. But now I can't. So this is now Peach isn't here.
That means something already has to be pre-selected.
Right, in order for it to filter the value out. The other thing I could think of would be I think that the other way to do this would be to, like I said, get a list of the things that you've already selected and put them in a field and then filter based on that field, or actually do the opposite. So I guess technically you could do a field in here that it would be non-selected fruits. And it would be a calculation, and it would be a list of the fruits from the subcategory table, and then you would filter them, and then you'd base the value list on that. This person posted an article. You can see what that leads to. Kind of messy live stream learning. We're going to learn about this together. What they did in that article is they did what I was talking about. They made a list of the items that were selected, and then they would refresh the list as you clicked into the field to find they made their keys be, if it was empty, it'd be 0, otherwise it'd be a list of all of the options, and then the options would reduce based off of the relationship. But that is very confusing to demonstrate without having read the article, and I don't really want to sit here in silence for 10 minutes reading an article live. So, Stu, there's a resource you can look at. I'm sorry I couldn't demonstrate it here. I'm sure I could if I was a little better prepared for it, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to anticipate that question.
Can you have for the same category? What do you mean by that, Dymock? Oh, that's a really old article. They had to be converted to FMP 12.
Yeah, he said it was an FMP 7.
Oh. Different subcategory in some case.
Like if I were to go and create like a third option here of like dairy, like that, and have a option, and this is, milk and cheese. And then you jump back here, and if I select dairy, which is already here, and then my subcategories that I broke, I forgot to unbreak them. Sorry. It's a good reminder to not distribute files that you've changed. All right, so we can get rid of that. Say okay. So now it should, yeah, cheese and milk. Like this. Is this what you're talking about? Or like apples and different categories of apples. It would, yeah. So it would work the same way. You can do, this is primary and secondary categories, but you could do tertiary and all the way down the line to as many as you really wanted to, following the same dynamic of relationship, as long as you had subcategory or tertiary category as a table and you related it based on subcategory and selected subcategory. You could have a third field that would be, red delicious. I mean, I have 6 minutes. I might be able to get that out. I'm going to name it third category because I want to. And I don't know, it'd be just subcategory. Can't wait till I get like 8 of those. It's like subcategory. And it works basically the same way. You would have subcategory as a field. And if you wanted to get technical, you could have category as a field as well. And then you would have the item. And then you would just go down here and you have your sub category, and you'd have a relationship of this here, and it would be subcategory line items based on subcategory. And you can continue to go down this line. So we'd say this, and we'd go in here, and we would say subcategory to subcategory. So then we'd have that. And so now if we went into here, this is categories, but then we'd need another one, which would have to be subcategories. Probably should have just duplicated instead of what I just did, but that's okay. We're just gonna do that right now because it'll be faster.
There's always options.
Yeah, then you just change this. This is subcategory. And we change this to be in subcategory. It would be subcategory, and then you would need to make a new relationship here, which would be, yeah, it would be subcategory to subcategory based on subcategory. And that'd be you, and say okay, go in here, and we would say we want it this. We want it like this, and we want to change that. And say okay. Then we'd go into here. We would change this to be this one. And we'd say okay, and go here, and we would change this to be item. And then you would make your value list based on this. Right? Yeah, line item subcategory selected to subcategory. Yeah. So then you'd go over to here, and you would go back one more, and then you would go into your list. Well, we'll make this bigger so we can add our tertiary option here. And we would need to make a field for it. Came real prepared for this.
Oh, you're good. This is just kind of the nature of live stream. People
Yeah,
ask questions and you have to build stuff live.
We'll do it live. All right, so we'll create that. Say okay, and we have a field here for that. All right, so that is going to be okay. Can we be the field I just made? Thank you. Good job. All right, so now we're going to go in here, and we're going to make a new one that it will be filtered. I'm just going to call it third category. So well, no, I shouldn't, because that's bad practice. I've given you all enough bad ideas for today. So we would use values for subcategory item, and we would include only related values starting from here, and we'd say okay, and we would say okay. And we'd say okay. And so now we have to actually have some values to base it off of. So if I went into this and I edit it, I changed our name to be, I'm going to put spaces so that you can actually read what that says. And then I say okay, and then I go into here, and I'm going to make you this drop-down list based off of subcategory. Right, and now I have apples, and I have to jump back into this because I didn't turn on the little checkbox that lets me create new ones. And then this would be something like
Green apples.
Yeah, let's just say green apples. And I jump back to the very beginning. I went from fruit and I selected apple. I would need to select this value list.
There we go.
Green apples. But you'll see from caret, there is no such item. It's the exact same principle, just played down one further in relationships. I have the same category, but in one case I need just one subcategory. In the second case, subcategory I want the details.
So like if you selected fruit, you would get two different value lists that popped up?
There would have to be one, in one way or another, you'd have to denote which one you want to see based off of either a field or a flag, a variable, something that's set. Otherwise, there's no way to get FileMaker to understand that it's supposed to filter one way or the other. Sorry, we went on a little bit of a tangent if we're not really answering your original question, but
You know,
it was valuable to someone, I'm sure.
yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I will give these files to Margaret right after we're done here. She'll post them in the Discord, or should I give them to you now? Would it be better if I gave them to you now?
Just fling them at me and I'll post to Discord and then I'll repost it to the other
To
stuff
Zoom
tomorrow.
and stuff so everyone can.
Yeah, so I'll do that later. So
Okay.
or tomorrow.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
No, it isn't me. It isn't my fault now.
Take responsibility for my own actions or blame you.
All right, we'll see if the music plays this time.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!